Everybody, it's Casting Court TV. This is your girl, Miss Public Info, here with the latest and greatest and sometimes hated updates of your favorite high profile cases going on around the country. All right, guys, did you think we were going to go a day without something from the Diddy trial? Yes, yes, yes. Okay, so we have some news. News that is unconfirmed, however, but we want to give you the news anyway because it's something that Casting Court TV talked about. Casting Court TV loves to have our analysis confirmed. Of course. TMZ is reporting that it's unconfirmed news that Sean Combs is enrolled in a drug treatment program and in a domestic violence program while they're at the holding facility there in Brooklyn, where he is awaiting sentencing on October 3rd. Now, if you recall, when I talked to you, when I talked to you a few episodes ago about Diddy and the sentencing, I talked to you about how he's going to need to fall on his sword a little bit as it relates to the Department of Probation. Department of Probation, they do the recommendations sentencing that goes over to the judge. That is part of the package that the judge sort of looks at to decide how he's going to sentence Sean Combs. And part of the Department of Probation's reasoning is happens during this post set or pre-sentencing interview. The PSI is what it's normally called. That they do with the defendant. They will conduct this interview with Sean Combs, and during this interview, this is Sean Combs's opportunity to really sort of talk himself up, fall on his sword, talk about how, he's had a tragic upbringing, for instance, or talk about how he has a drug abuse problem, and that this is what sort of spearheaded a lot of this maniacal, very irresponsible, reckless behavior that got him caught up in the two convictions. So what you're trying to establish when you are the defendant that is in a PSI, you're trying to establish to the Department of Probation that I am rehabilitatable. I am someone who is trying. I am someone who is taking preemptive steps on my own to sort of, get myself together, right? So part of that would be, as we so rightly guessed, and again, this is unconfirmed. TMZ did a little reporting and said that they haven't gotten the confirmation, but certainly Casting Court TV, Miss Public Info here, would not be surprised because we talked about this last week, and that is he is apparently, possibly, potentially enrolled in a drug treatment program and domestic violence program. And what that says to the Department of Probation is that he is trying, that this defendant is taking some accountability for his actions. And so that could bode well for him as it relates to what the recommended sentencing is going to be from the Department of Probation. As you know from previous episodes, that the judge considers 3 areas outside of his own thoughts when he's thinking about sentencing: the Department of Probation, the government, and the defense. Now, on to those 2 other entities, the defense and government. Remember that last week at that hearing, or after that hearing, Judge Submaranian told the defense and the government that he wanted examples of cases where defendants had been sentenced favoring in the way in which they want. So as it relates to the government wanting a stiffer penalty from somewhere in the 5 to 8 year range, they need to come up with an example of someone who has been charged with the Mann Act or charged with one of these lesser sexual trafficking crimes and received a more stiffer penalty. The defense will need to come up with case law precedents, examples of where someone has been charged with the Mann Act or charged with the same lower risk or lower rate sex trafficking crime and was then therefore sentenced on the lower side of things. Okay. And then from there, he's going to consider what his sentencing is going to be. Now, some people are saying, well, the government can forget about it because I don't think there's ever been someone that's been convicted of the Mann Act that's actually been sentenced to 5 to 6 to 8 years or whatever. They can forget it. That's not going to happen. Da 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 da. You have to remember. Now, before I go on, I again saw what the judge did in a sentencing that he did last week. And it was a different case, and it was much more stiffer case. But it was a case where the Department of Probation was asking for 90 months. I think the government was asking for 100 months or something like that. And Judge Submaranian went with 70 months. And he went with 70. This was a gun charge. And he went with 70 months because of some extenuating circumstances surrounding the defendant and his upbringing and the issues that he was having at home with his parents. Now, this wasn't a juvenile, but in terms of his upbringing, he wasn't like super old. I think he's 19, 20-ish, somewhere in there. But he's someone that he felt was eligible to receive this sort of, consideration. So I think we need to look at the fact that though this might be the recommendation from the Department of Probation, whether it be, lesser or more, I think that Judge Submaranian is going to go with his own feelings on this. He's going to go with what he thinks is appropriate. And you have to remember, Judge Submaranian is a guy that's going to go straight down the middle and straight by the book. I don't think we're looking at someone that's trying to, make a huge vigilante point or make an example out of someone or anything like that. I think he's going to go down the middle. Now, the government wants 6 to 8 years, and the defense wants, I believe, 21 to 25 months, essentially time served. Do I think Sean Combs is going to get time served? He's not going to get time served. Do I think he's going to get 5 years? Do I think he's going to get 5 to 8 years? I don't think he's going to get 8 years, but I do think he's going to get at least 5 years. Somewhere between 3 to 5 years is, I think, the neighborhood in which he's probably going to live. And this is based off of the charge itself, but also how Judge Submaranian seems to be sentencing when it comes to considering the Department of Probation, the government, and the defense. I think that the defense can forget about this slap on the wrist. I think they can forget about this walk in the park, the song and the dance, the time served business. I think that Judge Submaranian is going to be like, okay, great. You need to be in a drug treatment program. You should have already been in a domestic violence program. But this is a little 11th hour. Now, it's kind of darned if you do, darned if you don't. If he wasn't in those programs, it would be like, well, Combs, where is the accountability, right? Because I told you this situation requires him to fall on his sword, right? So they're going to say, well, where's accountability? So to sort of make up for that, here he is enrolling in these programs. Now, the fact that he's enrolled in these programs isn't going to make him look like a choir boy, because the milk has already been spilled, right? It is what it is. So it's not going to be that. So I think that for Judge Submaranian, who also is a little bit miffed with the defense, who also is just, wants Combs to go away, I think, and also is fair and is judging by the actual case itself and the evidence that has been presented before him, as well as the consideration of the Department of Probation, the government, and the defense. I think that Judge Submaranian is going to live in the neighborhood between 3 and 5 years. I think that he wants Sean Combs to really understand that though there may not be precedent set as it relates to the Mann Act, that people have been given this stiff of a penalty, 3 to 5 years, and probably have only done 1 year or whatever the case is. I need you, for your own sake, to stay in, to really rock out this program that you're in. Because Sean Combs right now entering a drug program and entering a domestic violence program, and then, getting time served and getting out in October and having only what, 3 months, maybe two actually at best, of a drug program, and 2 months of a domestic violence program, is not hardly any semblance of a treatment program. A 2 month treatment program after years and years of this kind of maniacal violence and carrying on that he's obviously copying to, that he's obviously taking accountability for. So I can see Submarinian saying, for your own good and your own rehabilitation, Mr. Combs, I think you need to do 3 to 5 years. I think you need to do 3 years. I think the sentence for 3 years will be good for you. It will give you an opportunity to really take on to this drug treatment program, take on to this domestic violence treatment program that you're in, and really sort of, take advantage of this opportunity. And I think that's what you're going to hear on the sentencing. If he is indeed, if it is indeed rather confirmed that he's in this program. What do I think about the fact that he's in the program? A big deal. That's what I think. I think it's big deal. I think if he uh if he had have gotten released on the day of the verdict, he wouldn't be in that program right now. I think he's in the program again to show face for, the court, for Judge Submarinian. Also, I think he was alarmed that he did not receive bail. So there's a little, feeling of regret and trepidation for him there. But in terms of does this guy deserve a pat on the back? Absolutely not. Like, this is something he should have done long a time ago. We recall back in the trial that we learned that Jane Doe, Daphne Joy, had helped him write a letter to get into this batterers program, which he never ever actually got a chance to get into because he then was subsequently arrested by the feds. And the reason he actually was trying to get into the program was because he was being sought after by the feds. So he's hoping that made him look a little better to them. So this is sort of the MO of Combs, where, he's kind of like in trouble, or he kind of wants to seem, like he's, doing the right thing, or you wants a more lenient sentence, or a lenient outlook, judgment, or whatever the case is. And so that's why he's sort of like, okay, let me just take this program so they can see that I'm trying. And listen, guys, I'm not saying that he's wrong. I'm not saying that, but what I'm also saying that is that if he were not in this predicament, if he were not institutionalized right now in that holding facility, waiting for his sentencing that could be stiffer than lenient, he would not be in that program. And that's essentially how Judge Submarinian is going to look at this as well. Okay, well, I'm glad he's in the program, but 2 months in the program is not going to work. I mean, I probably would have felt a lot better for Combs if he would have potentially, try to seek out something earlier, maybe when he was already in, while he's been awaiting trial, because he had already tried to get into the program prior to becoming arrested. So it was obvious he knew he had a problem. So him entering into this program during the trial phase wouldn't have, at any way, shape, or form, sullied his case. And as a matter of fact, legally, they would not have been able to even bring that up in court in front of the jury. So the jury would not have even had an opportunity to consider that against him or for him in his case. So I would feel a little bit better if Combs had have, entered these programs during the almost year that he's been awaiting trial. That would have looked a lot better. But to enter this program in the last 2 months before your sentencing, where you very well could receive time served, although unlikely, is pretty much letting us know that you're not looking to take accountability. You're just looking for a way out. All right, guys. Well, that's all we have for today. And I'll look back to you on Tuesday. Thanks so much. And we'll talk to you soon. We're adjourned.